Hi everybody, Justin Leslie here, Pfizer Whistleblower, Alternative Media, Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, O'Keefe Media Group, Whistleblower, guy who exposed James O'Keefe for Bohemian Grove, should be one of the biggest stories ever, but the alternative media, people like Candace Owens and Ian Carroll, don't see it as a big deal that James O'Keefe, the whistleblower, uh, guy that he is, took a whistleblower story and couldn't publish a Pfizer whistleblower story that was able to potentially um, really make an impact in 2021. So this is all gonna be just something that's been on my mind. I'm gonna do my best to just vent honestly and share my thoughts because I've been away from the public in regards to like making videos recently because I'm in chiropractic college right now, going through school, while also being a whistleblower, and it's kind of like I'm like in two different paradigms right now, and it's just kind of it's odd to go through. Um, so I just want to pretend I don't want to like pretend that I have certain things going on, like I have a jam-packed schedule, but I also feel like I have an obligation to my audience to remain active. And, people have been leaving some comments on my YouTube channel saying that they're praying for me. And so I just want to put myself out there again and basically acknowledge that I really have been meaning to post since my last post. I've kind of just, um, being honest, I've been really, you know, I feel like I feel like I get stuck sometimes. I feel like I've been um questioning questioning my worthiness in a way as I've been going through like a self-improvement journey. Not in a bad way, but just, I feel like I'm waiting for like that switch to flip or something where it's like, oh, now you're worthy, Justin, and that's not gonna happen ever. It's more like just allowing myself to have the freedom to um, do what I need to do, which is speak truth. Um, and I feel like I go through some sort of like own self censorship in a way because the reality of my story and what I did from the age of 23 through like 26 was pretty incredible in regards to the exposure of Pfizer and the alternative media, and how James O'Keefe is essentially a CIA asset, and all these other talking heads are basically CIA assets. So basically, basically since Charlie Kirk happened, the whole Charlie Kirk assassination, to me, it's all just one massive distraction. That's a massive psychological operation on the world. And as of right now, December 30th, Candace Owens and Alex Jones, who actually interviewed me. The whole thing with Alex Jones, I'll get into after this, but Candace Owens and Alex Jones are fighting, and all these talking heads like Ian Carroll and um, Myron Gaines and whoever else, they just recently went on like a Twitter Spaces or something, and to me, there's there's so much I could get into in regards to like the veil of what controlled opposition is, in regards to like showing you in like screen sharing, but I just don't necessarily have the energy to do that. More or less, from my perspective, like the research that I've done, Candace Owens is married to George Farmer, who's, I believe, like English royalty, and Ian Carroll definitely comes across as a Fed. Um, Not trustworthy at all because he went to lengths to not talk to me as a Pfizer whistleblower. He's friends with Alex Zek, who's interviewed me, so he certainly knows who I am. If he's truly an investigative journalist, like he says he is, but um, I went in his YouTube chat a few months ago. I was saying that James O'Keefe went to Bohemian Grove, and he like shook it off as if it was nothing. But the reality is that Bohemian Grove is something that we're all left with questions on. So that being said, I mean, this whole Charlie Kirk assassination, I was told the day that I released my documentary Project Whistleblower in March of 2023 that Charlie Kirk went to the Bohemian Grove with James O'Keefe that same week that he went, and so did Tucker Carlson. So how are we as like truth tellers? How am I as a truth teller gonna actually like give anybody who isn't questioning what's going on with Charlie Kirk and this so-called assassination, give anybody credit if like any credibility if you are not questioning whether the entire thing was a staged intelligence operation. Because from my perspective, it clearly was. I mean, if you go back and just look at the footage, I mean, there's so many people who have went in on this already at this point in time where they've exposed a blood bag essentially coming out of his neck, the lapel mic moving, the F on the freedom going in and out in regards to F. There being a trap door, the fact that the stage was removed and like painted over, cemented over. Um, the holography camera, possible holography camera that was behind him, that footage was taken right away. There's so much in regards to Charlie Kirk and like the way that everything is happening right now with Erica Kirk and like the Romanian Angels and everything that was has been exposed in regards to her child trafficking in Romania with her family who is linked to DoD intelligence. Like, what are we doing? It feels like just like I said, like everything is so heavy because you can just see through all this stuff. And not that I want to escape it, it's just like, is this really our world that we're going through? Sometimes it's just avoiding the conversation because people are going to disagree, um, which is fine. But to me, it's like everything is becoming so obvious. Even like sports. Sports to me, like the NFL is showing how rigged it is. There was a play this week where the Steelers were playing the Browns, and the defense back on the Steelers was covering that guy Harold Fannin Jr. on the Browns, and he completely just whiffed when he could have made an interception. And there's just numerous plays that happen each week now with the NFL that it all just looks so staged, and it's obvious because they're linking they're linked and funded by DraftKings and FanDuel and everything else. So, it's all just it's like the Roman circus, the bread and circus. It's all distraction. So the fact that people give their energy to the stuff, which I'm guilty of, honestly. Like I've given my energy to it. Um, we have to stop. So yeah, I'm not here to really try and convince anybody about what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Um, I'm just sharing my perspective in the sense that there's a lot more important things that could ultimately be talked about, and that you must question why it's such a big thing right now. Um, like there's the digital IDs that are being pushed, and there's a mass surveillance agenda essentially being pushed down our throat that these alternative media talking heads like Alex Jones and Candace Owens and Ian Carroll, to name a few, should ultimately be reporting on. But this Charlie Kirk assassination, it's all just part of the circus of the hidden hands controlling these people ultimately to distract us from what's really important, which is exposing the actual truth that the entire thing was scripted and that Charlie Kirk, whoever Charlie Kirk is, the character Charlie Kirk, may ultimately still be alive. And that's where I lean, that he's ultimately still alive and that he's some sort of repurposed character now. You know, people have gone in how they believe he's alive, and I'm not going to do that on this video, but ultimately, it's just part of the greater illusion of what is real versus fake. Like the fact that this chair would fall through a table. Chairs are solid. So how do they fall through tables? Is the real question. I also wanted to touch on how my philosophy towards science and modern science itself has essentially grown to the point of philosophical doubt, in that a large majority of what I perceive as modern science is essentially fake, and that it's essentially impossible to prove, and that modern science itself is dogma and it's backed on assumptions that are backed on experiments that happen outside the human body. For example, vitamins. Show me vitamin A. Show me vitamin E. Show me vitamin K in the human body. Show me retinoic acid, please. Show me the vitamin D that you isolated from the sun rays and how it's like somehow a hormone, 120, 125 dihydrocalciferol or whatever it's called. Show me that in the body. You can't do it. So the people that take vitamins every day, you're being manipulated and co-opted by it's essentially a Trojan horse for big pharma still. You think about that? Like you think about the word vitamin. That is such a psychological operation in its own right. To think that there's 12 different vitamins B's, vitamin A, E, K, like vitamin this, vitamin that. It's all nonsense. And the philosophical doubt is essentially, I mean, it stems from the the debunking of virology itself, where I mean it's being proven that the whole field of virology is utterly nonsense. From the virology control studies done by Jamie Andrews, he's come out recently about how he's done all the experiments and shown how there's literally no virus in any sample that they say viruses could exist from ultimately. Um, doing the actual control experiments to prove the independent variable and showing the cytopathic effects that occur in these cell culture experiments with different cell lines. Um, so yeah, seeing different contradictions and assumptions that are treated as facts and essentially dogma. These models that were presented are ultimately left unquestioned when true science itself is all about just questioning. Like, if you're following the scientific method, you're ultimately supposed to continue to question scientific theories and continue to question scientific models to see if they're even upheld. So, um, another thing I wanted to touch on, I think I talked on my last video, was semen retention, where I've gone on a semen retention journey and I actually am approaching around 200 days of retaining my semen, meaning I'm not masturbating and I haven't had sex. I've been on an abstinence journey, and part of that actually is, my form. It's a form of repentance for me in a way, based off of my past and like what I was doing in college and undergrad and post college, like just drinking and living the typical college life and just doing like dumb stuff, really dumb stuff, and hooking up with women and having sex with people that you just like don't even know. Basically, it's truly a disgusting thing to think about, and um, I ultimately, coming forward as a whistleblower back in 2024 in March, I felt such a need still to escape my reality, where, I gave up drinking in 2022 and was, still like leaning into things like marijuana and weed as a crutch, essentially to like validate being off of alcohol, but also like maybe not every single day, but like consistently participating in self pleasure. Um, and to me, like I just started to realize over the last year and a half and participating in that, or last year, because I haven't done that in 200 days is over 6 months, right? So I'm I'm at a point where I haven't like wrote anything down, my thoughts about all this, but it's ultimately retaining your life force and your vital energy, your vitalistic energy, your sexual energy, to me is like the only way to meet yourself as a man. And for women too. It's just, I think that it's harder for me to understand from a women's perspective because, like, I have male genitalia, I have, a dick and balls. So it's really hard to speak from a women's perspective, but ultimately for guys, like, to be masturbating every day or releasing every 2 days, you just become tired. And then your baseline is essentially you're tired. You get up to a certain point and then boom, you release again and you let go all your energy. That's why you need to like fall asleep. You need it to you need it to like turn off an urge where if you move through that urge, then you keep the energy. And it's essentially there's a metaphor in the sense that it's our cerebrospinal fluid and our semen are closely related, and um, you're essentially holding the energy to send it up your spine and send it to your brain. But I don't know, am I doing much of that? I'm not really sure. Ultimately, I just know that I feel so much better and I don't really plan on falling into the trap anymore. And that is also closely related to edging, which is like even just touching yourself really at all. I don't, I haven't done that. It's like, it's really just the way of getting to know yourself, like animals out in the wild, they don't masturbate like 90 something percent of men do, or they don't, they don't have as much, um, they don't have like the amount of sex that we do in the sense of hooking up with people that you don't care about. And, you know, I mean, who am I to speak from an animal's perspective? But ultimately, like, God created men and women, and marriage itself is a sacred union, and sex should ultimately mean something. And so, the fact that our society has been spit on essentially in regards to the porn industry and OnlyFans, and, the fact that men just leak their energy because they are lusting over women. Like, lust is one of the most deadly sins because it's a sin against yourself. You're sinning on your own body. So I'm ultimately moving towards forgiving myself. And I have forgiven myself in regards to this whole semen retention thing, and like spilling my energy, but it's all like one big circle in the sense of like forgiving myself for like what happened with Pfizer, because I went in for like noble reasons. I wanted to essentially learn what was going on with COVID vaccines, and I ultimately learned how dangerous they were. And then it all unraveled into discovering that virology is nonsense. And then essentially all of modern science is nonsense too. So I've just been on this huge awakening journey, and um, sometimes I feel like I take life too serious sometimes, but other times I don't. I mean, I've definitely speak my truth, especially in person. Like, if you catch me in person, I'm gonna tell you like it is. It's just, I guess I've been avoiding making videos recently due to what I'm doing with chiropractic school and entire career shift and moving through the heaviness of all that, seeing it the way I do, kind of as, anatomy is essentially a theoretical construct of communication, but with my philosophy on philosophical doubt, it's definitely tough because, going through things like microbiology is essentially nonsense, and then biochemistry, nonsense. But also acknowledging that there are things like nerves and muscles that do exist in the body, and it's just, is our understanding of them accurate? I don't know. I think so, from what I can tell. But in regards to action potentials and things like that and synapses, I'm not sure if those actually exist. Um, there's probably something there, but ultimately, were they proven in experiments that happen outside the human body? I'm not sure. And this is just a glimpse at how I think. So, um, more content will be coming. Happy 2026, my friends. Thank you to those who have donated to me. Being a whistleblower is not easy, you know, definitely a cause of financial struggles and ruin ultimately. Um, my whole life savings went into my whistleblower experience back in 2024, and I'm still in the red. So that's what I get for speaking the truth. But money isn't real, so that's cool. Uh, but if you're going through your own period of doubt and silence, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, there's always time for your own self reflection and self inquiry towards your own personal growth. And so, being as conscious that I am towards basically everything at this point and being hyper aware, um, I know that I can help people and that people appreciate my perspective. And so, I'm gonna look to continue to do that. So, um, thanks again for listening. Leave a thumbs up in the comments if you made it all the way to the end. Appreciate you guys. Talk soon.